Hey everyone, welcome, welcome. I've been trying to, when I'm getting these videos up and going, someone had asked if I would put up the notification it's coming and leave it linger. So I've been trying to leave it linger for a little while so that people are notified. I get asked a lot, how do I get notified if you go live? So there is a notification, like a little bell button that you can click on to be notified when my videos get posted and when I go live. However, you have to know that it's like a small percent chance. I want to say I'm totally making up numbers, but it's like 25% or something. It is small of subscribers who have clicked on that button that actually get notified every time from every article, everything I've read. It's not 100%. So unfortunately, there's nothing I can do on my end to make sure that 100% of the time you get notified. So that's where that is. Good morning, everyone. Hey, JW. Hey, Susan, Becca, Simply. Hey, Nancy. So welcome and thank you guys for joining. So I had some questions from Jennifer. And can I show you? This is what happened to my email. It was setting out and I don't even know what happened in the course of the week. It's just how the week's going, guys. I would like to know if you work at all with forensic medical investigators. So in Michigan, we have medical examiners. Every state does not always have medical examiners only. Some have coroners that are involved. The medical examiner is in the pathology part of it, and that's who does the actual autopsy. So on site with your loved one, it is more than likely not going to be the medical examiner who is there looking at your loved one on site because they're the ones that are going to do the autopsy. It is a huge point of confusion with a lot of families that they say the medical examiner was there, they were investigating, they were looking at everything. That was the investigator. That's not the medical examiner pathologist. That is actually on site. So we, depending on the county, so some counties here in Michigan, just to say, they will contract with a funeral home to do all of the removals from the location. So the funeral home would come, get the deceased, and bring them to the location that the autopsy is going to be done at, if there's an autopsy. Otherwise, the medical examiner investigator will call the funeral home that the family wants to use to take the individual directly to the funeral home. This was the case in that story of the girl that woke up at the funeral home alive when they thought she was dead, is they deemed she didn't need an autopsy. So she went directly into the care of the funeral home. That's one question I keep getting about that is, why didn't they figure this out with the autopsy? Why didn't they do an autopsy? That's why. So we will often interact on the phone getting that first call about the individual that died from the investigator. Or if we go on scene, we will encounter the investigator there to work with them. Sometimes we do get calls afterwards. If an individual fell, like an elderly person fell prior to dying, they do have to come do an investigation to make sure the fall is not connected to the death. So if there's any extreme bruising, if the doctor puts anything about a fall or hip being broken or anything like that, the medical examiner may get involved, that the investigator comes to the funeral home and may take pictures and everything. So we do interact with them quite a bit. Oh, hey, over in St. Clair Shores on the east side. Hey, Eileen, yay. Welcome. I love when people are so excited they catch me live. I think that's fun. Can people who have COVID-19 be organ donors? So currently, no. There's a lot of, it goes back and forth. Even with donations at medical schools, like donating your full body, a lot of them were shut down and not accepting any donations during this time. So you can't donate something that's infectious, but there's a lot of different theories. Do you have to get consent from the next of kin to perform an autopsy? No, it is something that is asked for by the medical examiner. It is not something that the family has to agree to. If there are maybe religious factors or something of that nature, they can voice them and maybe they can do a workaround. But if an autopsy is deemed necessary, it's because they are trying to make sure that somebody else is not involved in this cause of death. Hello in Dublin. Hey, Cynthia. Oh, a hidden truth about them. Thank you. Yeah, Caitlin. I'm interested to see if we get some crossover people that didn't know about the other person maybe before our video together. So interesting to see. Thank you, Ginger. No, the family would know if they did an autopsy because they would be notified where their loved one was. You know, the whole family may not be notified, but the primary, whoever's the immediate next of kin, is going to know what's going on. How closely do you work with hospice care nurses? Same thing. They're going to be the ones on site who are going to pronounce the individual. They are going to be, sometimes they stay, sometimes they don't before we get to the house. And then we may see them and they may pass information on, but they will often be the ones who call the funeral home to give us the information over the phone. They may call us beforehand to let us know the family has questions and to connect us to the family. But we do work with them, not as much as maybe you would think. It's kind of a pass off of family when we're working with them. Cindy, thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, in Cincinnati, do you get a break over the holiday period this year, or will you be on call? I stay on my same schedule. So I don't work a full schedule at a funeral home, which allows me to do some of this as well and be a mom and take care of the home and everybody. So I'm going to maintain my same schedule, still trying to do videos still working at the funeral home. And it has been busy. It's been a very busy month so far at all the funeral homes around us. So hoping it slows down just a smidge during the holiday. My husband fell while at hospice. I had to talk to the medical examiner regarding his 2 falls and broken hip. So I had to let the examiner know there wasn't any abuse. So yes, Stephanie, that's prime, perfect example of what I was talking about. Hey, Lindsay in Boston, I have a weird question. When someone is buried, do you ensure that the head is buried by where the headstone is, or are some people buried basically the wrong way? Well, every cemetery is a little different. The headstone may not be at the head. And some cemeteries people face east, some are west, some are north, some are south. So every cemetery is not the same, and headstones are not always at the head. So it's all about the way that the cemetery is laid out. So you have to ask at the cemetery if you don't know. I mean, I would know if I was burying somebody there by how we were burying that one individual, how they did the cemetery for the most part, but it's not the same everywhere. Hey, Eileen, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me know. How many of the dead does the family make their own casket to be placed in for interment? Not often, but I'm going to say in some areas, I mean, if you get into maybe Amish communities, they're going to build more caskets for their own loved ones. So it's going to depend on maybe different areas. We had, let's see, over the course of this year, I want to say just one at the one funeral home I'm at that does a large volume of calls. We had one, and I wish I could have taken pictures to show you guys. It was gorgeous how they made this casket. It was super simple, but beautiful. Just stunning. It's amazing. You think, oh, a family's going to make a casket at home. And sometimes we do worry, what is that casket going to be like? Is it going to be reinforced enough? Is it going to be the right size? There's all these things that come into play that we do worry about. And the family brought this casket in and just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So we do get to see some really cool things that families do. Urns even. Urns, families bring in some amazing urns, pottery and wood built and all sorts of things that they've made. Yes. Do we ever have someone that buy their casket at Amazon? No joking. Amazon, Costco, any online platform, people can buy caskets. However, I will say, so the FTC, and it was regulated that funeral homes can't charge families more if they buy a casket from a third party. Any rule that they want to impose on someone who has a third party casket has to be imposed on every single individual that they sell a casket to. So you can't tell a family they have to be there and sign for the casket if you don't have every other family that orders a casket with you be there and sign for that casket. You can require as a funeral home that it has to be delivered during business hours, which is what every other casket company that you deal with does. So you have to just institute essentially the same rules. You can't penalize a family for ordering from somewhere else. I will say you get into time constraints ordering from online. If the casket shows up damaged or not up to par, there isn't time to turn around and have them send you a new one from that company. So the pricing is not often really less or much less, depending. And so I think it's that concept of getting a deal, thinking you're getting it less expensive from some places. And I'm not going to say with some funeral homes, I'm sure it is substantially less. However, you have to think about the timeline as well. So I have no problem people making, ordering caskets from anywhere else, but they need to be the right quality, because if you have your casket and the pallbearers go pick up and the handles rip off because you got it from some online cheapcaskets.com company at something, that looks bad on the funeral home. So we are reserved and hesitant because of that as well. Whatever people say reflects on the funeral home. So if the individual's unembalmed, if the casket's from somewhere else, what we can't control still reflects back on us. So we have to think of those things when it comes to business. In my country, there is no advanced directory. Can I download the USA Kind and edit? Will it still be legal? What do you mean by advanced directory? Advanced directive? Like medical? Can a person have a closed viewing in a cardboard box? My grandfather wants a cardboard box where all the grandkids can draw pictures on it, but don't know if the funeral home will allow such a thing. I mean, it's not a viewing if you have the cover on it. It's just a visitation gathering time, maybe. I think that I think the discussion would be is, why would the funeral home allow somebody to do that? Because that will be judged by outside viewers, regardless of the simplicity of what your grandpa wanted and to color on it. I would maybe recommend to a family to do like the next step up, basic cremation casket. That's like a little more casket looking that you can still draw all over. You can draw all over any casket, any wood, metal, anything. You just get Sharpies and you draw all over it. So not to sway you from the cardboard box, there may be funeral homes that won't allow you to do that just as their business practice. So when a person passes away and they have life insurance, does the money go straight to the person as the beneficiary or does it go to the funeral home? If the family wants to use it to pay for the funeral, you can do what's called an assignment. So there will be a paperwork filed along with the claim forms that designates the portion to pay the bill to go directly to the funeral home, and the remainder would go to the beneficiary. The beneficiary has to sign away those rights to that portion of the money. The funeral home may charge a fee for doing this, because if they are doing it directly them to the insurance company, they may be waiting 3 to 4 months for payment on that funeral. They may also use a third party who gives them payment right away, and that company waits that duration to get payment. And so that company charges that fee for it. So yes, you can use it, and only the money that goes to pay the bill would go to the funeral home, but there may be a fee associated with that. Because you talked about prints not that long ago, I got my mom's prints from the medical examiner because she wasn't given the option at the funeral home, and as a surprise made a necklace. That's awesome. That's really cool. There's so many cool fingerprint things. There's like a gold, like a just a basic ring band, and that you get the print all around it. Even as a mom, I think it would just be cool to get my girls' prints around it as like a cool thing to just have. I think about those things. You know, there's more than just the death part of some of that jewelry. It's just kind of cool to have your kids or your loved ones or your significant others, you know, fingerprints with you and part of them with you. Actually, my friend has a heart and has one of each of her kids' fingerprints or thumbprints on the heart. When first starting out in your funeral director career, how did you deal with the mental aspect of going to suicides, car accidents? I focus on the anatomy and the interesting part of it, you know, maybe that scenario, the logistics. I don't focus on the human side as much. I mean, if you walk into a home and there's parents crying, or there's spouses or significant others or somebody that's attached to the person there, then that's going to affect you being able to just walk in and go through your steps of what you need to do. There is a huge adrenaline component and a autopilot that does kick in, and you kind of go a little numb sometimes, and you just do what you need to do. Once you start, you're going to have an initial kind of hit of emotion to it. Then once you get into it and you're doing your job, you're not as focused on that part of it anymore, and you do what you need to do. Okay, she's upset. I need to take care of this child in front of me or whatever to the best that I can, so she sees that I am caring for this individual. I'm going to do my best. And, you know, you task focus. And that I feel like helps me. Like I can just feel the mental state right now that you go into when you're doing that. And I think it's just something that builds over time. If the person has life insurance and the beneficiary doesn't use it for the purpose, can they get in trouble if they get the money and they don't use it for the funeral? If the funeral's paid, then the funeral's paid. They don't have to use life insurance to pay the funeral. They can just write a check to pay the funeral. Advance directive. That's not something that comes through the funeral home. I mean, that's something you have to do through a lawyer. Kari, what are your thoughts on the future of embalming? As with the current generation is obsessed with looking perfect at all times, will this transfer how they look in death? Oh, you know, Cynthia, that's such a good question, because I feel like that could go two polar opposite different ways, where a person who is obsessed with maybe looks and perfection is going to want themselves to look as absolutely perfect as possible for viewing. So they'd be more inclined for embalming and restoration. However, if someone is very caught up in looks, they could go the exact opposite. I don't want anybody to see me when I have died. Cremate me, get rid of me. I don't want anybody to see me. So I think that that part of it is going to balance itself out, because you're going to have, you know, with anything, you get the far right and you get the far left. It's what goes down the middle. I think that embalming is still going to be an option. We have all these other options though as well for disposition and for service types. So I think that instead of just these two lanes, we're going to just branch out into more lanes. So the embalming is probably going to stay about how it has been. We're just going to have all these other avenues of disposition as well. Ty, no, the beneficiary doesn't have to let the funeral home know anything. The funeral home just is concerned that they get paid. They don't care if there's life insurance. They don't care about any of it. But if their bill is not paid, then the family is going to get, you know, sued down the road, and they're going to have to pay. And if that money is there, then the court will take that money to pay the funeral home. So if the beneficiary is the one that signed the contracts and everything. At a funeral home where they place the hearse and transport van, is it packed and narrow? Just a garage. How much does staffing get paid? It depends on the funeral home, region of the country, size of the funeral home, type of work you're doing. How does the funeral home remove the deceased from the hospital? Do they go through front door or is there like a special entrance? So Devon, this is a cliche of the funeral business when it comes to hospitals. The entrance is usually near the dumpster. No joke. It is the most secret, hidden back door, typically, that you would ever see at a hospital. It's going to be down a little hallway, and it's going to be an unmarked door that nobody wants to go near. And I'm not just exaggerating on this. Like, this is a huge joke. Not joke bad, but it's one of those, like, it's kind of funny because it's so true that we enter in the loading docks and back alleys and near the dumpster often because it's such a secret that people die at a hospital. One of the realities of hospitals is people die there. So why is the morgue so hidden? It's a very odd thing. I wish I was joking on this, but it is odd. My husband was cremated. I got our 2 boys each a small bronze statue with his ashes, and I got a cross necklace. That's very cool, Stephanie. Hey, Dan. You're welcome, Cynthia. Time Maze. The life insurance has nothing to do with any of it. If the beneficiary is not the one who signed the contract, and as long as they pay the contract, it doesn't matter. If the state will find that money when they go looking, if that money exists. Please do a cemetery or do a video at Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland. Have I ever been to Cleveland? I've been to Cleveland once. I ate a really good dinner at a steakhouse there. And I had a conference at the big convention center. I don't even know what it was called, but it was right downtown. That is very true. I do removals, and it's not the most well kept up area at the hot. See, Ron? I'm not trying to make fun of it, but it is just the truth. Do people who have plastic surgery on their body still look like the same after embalming, or does the look change? That doesn't really affect the individual. But you're gonna notice, when people lay on their backs, your face and everywhere doesn't set the same way as it does when you're upright. Plastic surgery, even like Botox and injectables and things like that, are made for your face to be this way. So when you lay back, it's going to affect that you may see spots that are wrinkly from the skin laying down that are maybe taut in different areas. So that may be affected by it. Have you ever heard about Zoroastrian or Parsi funeral? I have not. This is when I type it in, and so I can look at it later. I'll have to look at what that is. I have no idea what that is, but I like to learn about new things. Thank you, Stephanie. Of course, Nancy. Let's see, what can I tell you guys? So I don't know. Usually I keep a stack of my emails, and it wasn't here, so I have to hunt. I think I put it in a folder in my carry bag that I carry back and forth. Not legit like Kari's bag, but the one, my attaché bag, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, that I carry back and forth. So I think it's in there because I had all my notes for some 2-minute videos I did last week on Friday. And so I think I misplaced it. It's out in my folder somewhere. I'm going to go to last week's video and read down some questions. Let's see, embalming, the extreme embalming. I've gotten more people asking questions about that, which it's not really, it is what it is. One day we'll find out more information. As soon as I know, you guys will know. I think kids seem to handle being around death better than most adults. So true, Eric. Children who grow up around this type of environment often find some inspiration. If it's a family business and they shadow their parents, just go for it, he says. That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a big thing that people think, you know, when you bring the kids to work that, oh, we're going to do them such harm, but do any mortuaries, oh, Robin's saying she was asked if any mortuaries in town did liquid cremations. I have several videos on water cremation out, Robin. I have a new one coming. I'm just waiting for that go ahead from the individual where we filmed. It is such a cool process. There's a large cylinder, water, it fills it up. You put in 2 different chemicals, sometimes 1, 2, if you'd like to speed it up a little bit more. And during the course of it, there's a little fan that moves those chemicals around to help keep it distributing, and the body breaks down into natural elements, just like with flame cremation. And at the end, you're left with bones and that basic part of the skeletal structure. They're dried out and then they are cremulated down into cremated remains. So you have the same end result as a flame cremation. It's just a different avenue to get there. Have you ever had a multiple deceased service? What were the circumstances? I've talked about this a little bit, I think. I've had some spouses, grandma, grandchild, mother, child, things like of those natures. And, you know, I think the big question is always, do you have 1 or do you have 2 services? Because, you know, significant others are going to have their whole own families. They may share children. They may have children separate. They may not have children at all. They may have separate work coworkers and sections of coworkers. So it might often where you put them in different rooms, but have visitation at the same time. So people can go and visit in whichever room they want, or separate ends of a large space where you can go to one end for one family, the other end for the other family. I've seen where they do things on completely separate days, which makes for a heck of a long week of funerals for families when they're doing, you know, 2 funerals in a week because of that. But depending on the circumstance, I would probably recommend just having them in different spaces or different ends of the room or something like that, depending on the situation. There's pros and cons to a lot of it, and a lot is just communication with the family and discussing some of the different things that they should be thinking about that maybe they haven't thought about. Have you ever lost the casket key after a funeral and looked everywhere for it but never found it? No, because they're usually everywhere. You have them in drawers and under cushions and in the hearse and in bags and things all over the place. So you can easily grab one. Have you ever had the opportunity to embalm and work at the funeral of distinguished clergy, Roman Catholic cardinal priests? No, I've never handled a service for anybody that's like very high up in any religion. Are you still coming to Phoenix and would be able to answer? Just curious. Becca, yeah, if I come out to Phoenix, I will plan to do some videos with Monica when I'm out there. Okay, so Zoroastrianism is one of the oldest monotheism religions. Their funeral is similar to Tibetan sky funeral. Very cool. I will have to look into that and see because I'm just not familiar with it. There's so many religions. Like the oldest Christian religion is called Mandean, and never knew that ever. So there's a lot of interesting religions I've never heard of, and they just don't teach you about. Recently, I went to a funeral and his arm felt soft. Why is that? Just how he reacted to the fluid. The embalmer may not have used a lot, or it neutralized over time within the body, which can happen. Have you ever had a Jane Doe in your career, and how does the funeral home handle this? No, typically Jane and John Does, depending on the area, may just be stored with the medical examiner for all eternity until maybe they get a resolution. They may be cremated and then stored back with the medical examiner. All different scenarios. It depends on the situation. I have not handled a Jane Doe. I have had people found after many years that are missing, things like that, but no Jane Does or John Does. Why do they double charge you if two people are getting buried in the same plot? Because they have to open the plot twice and they're charging for both uses of the grave space. Thanks for 2 minutes on the hearse pegs and showing the back of the hearse. You're welcome, Lisa. Yeah, that's something people have asked about. It's amazing what people want to know that to me seems really small that I just take for granted because it's just there and I know the answer. And so I love that it gets asked so I can give some answers. And even some of the answers, I'm like, I can't talk 2 minutes on that, but I try. So some of those videos, people are like, man, she just keeps saying the same thing over and over or whatever, but 2 minutes can be a long time if there's not a lot to an answer. So I may not make 2 minute videos on some things because either it's too large of a topic or it's too small that I can't talk for 2 minutes on it. But some of these are perfect 2 minute topics that you guys bring up for sure. You're never too old to get in the business. There's so many positions within the funeral home. You don't have to just be a licensed funeral director or embalmer. You can be a funeral attendant. You can work in the office. You can work visitations. You can work parking lot. You can do pre-need. You can do at-need. You can do aftercare. You can make arrangements. You can do all sorts of things within the business and still leave an impact and still get the warm fuzzies and still be a part of the whole process. You don't have to go to school, get licensed, and do everything. Some states you don't even have to go to school to get a funeral director's certification to meet with families. So all sorts of options. Oh, Dominic Williams. To properly load a casket into the hearse. I don't know that there's any proper way. You just place it in and pass the handles to each other. That's one I don't think I could do 2 minutes on probably. But I can try. Aw, Sandy. Yeah, it's sad when somebody, dies when you've been there with them, I think, and seen them in those, those special years of their life. In your professional opinion, when would it be a good idea to reach out to a funeral home to enter an apprenticeship internship? I am just now finishing up my first term to get my bachelor's degree. It depends on your state and the rules. So some states you can't do an apprenticeship when you're going to school. Some states you can. A lot of apprenticeships say how many hours you have to do in each week. So you have to figure out what you can balance, what your schedule is, and go from there. I know several people who have tried to do their apprenticeship and do like an online schooling, and there's just no time because they were working 40 to 60 hours a week, plus taking a huge course load, which is what the mortuary school program is. And they were not being able to do both. It was just burning the candle at two ends and it was not working. And for some people, it works perfectly. So you have to find out what is the rules and regulations in your state. Thank you, Catherine. So if two people are buried at one time in one grave space, that's still two burials. They may charge for two opening and closings. They may charge for 1.5. Every cemetery is going to be a little different what they do. How long can a body be kept if the family doesn't claim them or if there's a John or Jane Doe? There's some places, some states that their medical facilities hold them for years. It just depends on the place. How to load with 2 people. All right, Dominic, I'll work on these videos. I'll work on that. I'll put on my list. So I saw a casket wrapped in plastic and he didn't die of COVID. Why did they do that? Sandy, where did you see the casket wrapped in plastic? We do have a small hospital here in my local area, and it's so small that they bring the deceased out to the emergency room, and you can see the funeral home vehicles setting out next to the ambulances. That's cool. One funeral, I'm trying to think. A lot of times we will enter into the emergency room to get security and let them know we're there, and then they will meet us down at the morgue entrance because that door is usually locked and there's maybe not a phone there that you call that you're there. So we'll often go to the emergency room to check in to find out what's going on, and then they'll tell us where to go. So as a funeral director here in North Carolina, we were taught that the feet goes in the hearse first and the head last. And, I think some of that is personal preference that people will do one versus the other for whatever rhyme or reason. I don't know that there's a rule to how you place someone in a hearse in terms of direction. But I think it's interesting how different things are taught and maybe why they're taught. Oh, we're going to put them this way because if we stop fast, they're only going to slide to their feet and not their head, or they're going to, all sorts of different reasons. So, well, I'm going to wind down for today, guys. Thank you for all the information. Sandy, you were in Mexico and saw this burial, or it was on a video or something. You'll have to email me on that to tell me kind of how you saw the casket and wrapped in plastic. I would guess it might have been, if it wasn't for you don't know for sure it was for a burial, it might have been one that had been transported there. Was it like a graveside? I would say that they may have been concerned about COVID, so they were wrapping the casket, or nobody was in it and they were delivering it, because there's companies that just deliver them wrapped in plastic, or at a home, it was wrapped in plastic. Smell, they may have been severely decomposed and they were wrapping it so the smell couldn't come out. You'll have to send me the video maybe, and I'll give you a better judgment because I don't know the connotation with the whole thing. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for joining. Next week, I'll be here Friday and we will do another video together. Bring your questions. If you have anything urgent, always email me, Kari@KariNorthey.com. I'll get back to you within maybe 2-3 days at the most, or I'll tell you that I'm going to talk about it on the next coffee chat, which is this. So talk to you guys soon, and I appreciate you. Thanks. Bye.